Hello, everyone. So in my last video, I mentioned about that I will talk about three things, but when I completed the video and I uploaded it in YouTube, I noticed that I only talked about one thing, and that is inflation and what we can do to contribute in reducing inflation from the demand side. So I thought that why not I go back and then do another video and maybe talk about the other two things that I initially had in my mind, but I did not actually talk about it during the video. And by the way, I used to do lots of editing and things like that, but later on I decided that, you know what, this is my channel and I'll share with you the thoughts that comes to my mind. And sometimes without doing too much editing, it's like that's who I am. So okay, let's get going and let's talk about the other two things that were in my mind initially before making my first video. So the second thing that comes to my mind is that even though we live in North America, I'm in Calgary in Alberta, Canada at this time. And if you are watching this video from North America or maybe in Europe or maybe in the developed world, you might be thinking that, hey, the inflation rate is going up, it's totally bad. But think about those people who are not necessarily in the developed world. Even in the developing world, I think I was visiting Bangladesh. I am originally from Bangladesh, and I was visiting Bangladesh. And one of the things I noticed there is that there are two groups of people. Like one group, maybe they have too much money, and the other group, they have almost nothing. And then there's the other group who are struggling in between the two. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about them. I think the thing that I wanted to just point out is that in general, the people in the developing world, the people who have almost nothing and the people who are struggling between the very rich and very poor, will suffer the most. And I don't think many people are thinking about these people. The majority of the people in this world are not necessarily in the rich or the developed world. They are, even within the developed world, I have to admit that there are, like I am seeing more and more people in Calgary's street who are asking for a change. In other words, begging for money, dollar, toonie, whatever you want to call it. So it's very sad. So long story short, the second part is about people will suffer, and the people who are in the developing world who are not necessarily have lots of money in their pocket will suffer the most because of this high inflation and the situation that I think is a man-made situation that we are all in. What can we do about it? I don't have a solution, but I'm just sharing with you my thoughts that they are the ones we seldom talk about them, that we don't know. We think about ourselves, that's okay. But I feel for them that the majority of the people in this world will suffer the most because of this situation. The third thing that I talk about, I think will hit home in one way or another, and that is, I'm not sure whether that's the supply side of the economics or the demand side of the economics. Like I was noticing the other day that there's not many buses. Like if there's someone is sick, or let's say the bus driver might get sick, we all get sick, so that's no problem. But once he or she is sick, there is no replacement driver. And my son, we had to actually take him to the school because the bus didn't show up. Now, it can happen, but what it seems like it is happening, it might happen a little too often in this year. And I think because of the fact that we do not have drivers. Now, I think about it like pre-COVID, and I think that where are these people? Like there used to be drivers, there used to be people who are doing these jobs. Like we need people in different jobs. And there used to be people, like what happened to those people? Where did they go? So I think there are many explanations where these people went, like they may have changed their jobs, because if you suddenly stop their paycheck, let's say when COVID hit and said, hey, you go home, and then obviously they were getting some money from the government and so on. But I think people felt the risk in their mind that this is very risky. You are on an hourly basis, you are doing some work that is so there is significant exposure outside. Obviously the benefits and other things, I'm not sure whether they are any good, but people who work in the retail, people who work in the in this type of service industry, bus drivers, like rail, the folks who are like anyone who is customer facing and things of those nature, I think they are hardest hit during the COVID, and I think many of them just moved on. So it means that I think there's something that the government can and should do, and that is to provide the folks in this type of industry a layer of protection, some sort of layer of protection, because you need these people. You cannot just import people from outside as immigrants and then or what have you, and expect them to stay in these jobs. Like people, you may be able to import some people and then they will be in these jobs that people in Canada might not want to take because of the risk that they see. But once they understand the risk, then these people will also move on as soon as they can. So it is not a sustainable solution. What might well be a sustainable solution is to implement some sort of safety net, so that the people in these jobs can feel that there can be insurance, there can be, I don't know what you have to do, but more than just employment benefit, like unemployment benefit, I think we need to do something else, because we need to go back to the people who used to hold these jobs for a long time and maybe survey them as to what really happened, what are the thought process, what went through their mind, and what happened to all these people. Like, for example, I think an example that was well publicized was the airport situation in the summer, that Toronto airport was really bad, the other airports, and then people might blame the mask, the AirLifeCan app. Yes, everything contributed. But I truly believe, I think one of the key contributor was the fact that there were not many baggage handlers out there in any of the airports. And I think that was one of the biggest contributor, if any. So I think we need to ask that question, what happened? Because I feel like, again, not an economist, that this is a supply side problem. We are not providing or supplying enough labor force. The other day, I think Government of Canada, good for them, they announced that the international students can work more than 20 hours a week. I don't think that's a solution. I'm not saying that should not be done. I think it's great news for many international students who might find that this news helps them with their studies and stuff like that. But at the same time, think about this. International students who are actually studying in universities and taking very significant courses are not able to actually work that many long hours in any way. I used to be an international student at one point in my life. So I don't think that really helps. I think what we need to do here is to look back and go through a little more scientifically, like to understand what really happened. Not necessarily ask the people who did not hold those jobs. I think we need to go back to the baggage handlers. We need to go back to the bus drivers. We need to go back to the people who we find there's no people, but there used to be people, and survey those people as to what really happened to them, why they moved on, and what may make them come back to the profession they used to hold for a long time. Because that way we can create some sort of sustainable way of making sure that these people hold on to these jobs. Otherwise, people will come in, they will hold to those jobs temporarily, but they will move on. So we will create a cycle of unsustainable cycle. So I think that's the third point that I want to make, is that inflation rate driving up prices, we have to reduce demand side, which is to cut back as I said in my first video, cut back on the demand side. If you can cut back some of the things in your life, cut back, it will help reduce the demand. On the supply side, we have to look at providing people some sort of safety net and do a little more scientific research as to what really happened to these people. And let's not ask people like myself who didn't hold a baggage handler job in the past, and I'm talking about it. That's why I'm saying that, hey, I don't know what really happened, but we need to find out what really happened so that we can actually find a sustainable solution. And the third thing, which I mentioned, is that the people who will be most affected by all this madness with inflation, both in our country, in Canada, as well as outside, is the poor will be impacted the most. The people who will end up losing their job, because there will be lots of people who will end up losing their job. If I cut back spending, it will impact people in, let's say, what I'm not buying. So it will end up costing people's livelihood. So I think this is a very complicated problem and not necessarily straightforward solution. Even if anyone claims that they have, or he or she has a straightforward solution, I don't think anyone really has a straightforward solution. There might be lots of talking points to talk about it, but it's a very complicated problem. And many people around the world, especially the poor, will suffer the most. So you be safe, and you be happy with your family, and happy Thanksgiving.